Shown here is a new serpentine belt tensioner assembly. Begin by removing the fuel tank vent valve directly above the belt tensioner and supercharged pulley. In this image you can see the upper vent valve connection, purple arrow, the electrical harness connector, green arrow, and the lower vent valve connection, yellow arrow. Remove the lower vent valve connection by squeezing the two tabs on the outside of the connector and pulling it off. Take care not to use too much force on the plastic line. Next, remove the upper vent valve connection by pressing the tabs on the connector and pulling it up. Again, take care not to damage the plastic line. Use a small screwdriver to pull back on the plastic tab securing the electrical harness plug to the valve and pull it down and off the valve. Press the small tab on the mounting bracket, green arrow, and slide the vent valve off. Set it aside for the time being. This picture shows the belt tensioner tool mounted over the tensioner and ready to be pulled back to install the safety pin. In this image you can see the belt tensioner in its locked position. Keep in mind that the upper left engine mount has been removed for clarity in this image. As you pull back on the belt tensioner tool, the tensioner retracts and the tensioner arm emerges from the spring assembly. Place the safety pin, green arrow, through the second hole in the tensioner arm, yellow arrow. The tension will now be relieved from the belt. Place your floor jack under the center of the engine with a block of wood to distribute the weight of the engine and also protect the oil pan. With the airbox and hoses removed, and if you need additional assistance with those, please follow the link provided at the end of this video, you will have access to the transmission mount. With the floor jack under the engine and secure, remove the long 16mm bolt securing the mount to the bracket, green arrow. Remove the 16mm bolt securing the lower passenger side mount to the engine, green arrow. Remove the 8mm bolt that secures the upper radiator hose to the front of the intercooler. This will allow some flex in the upper radiator hose when you jack the engine up. Remove the ground strap from the engine mount bracket on the passenger side of the car. Be sure not to lose the bolt, which fits up underneath the bracket, as it can fall out once you remove the nut. Remove the small 8mm bolt securing the bracket holding the two hoses to the engine mount brace. Move the bracket out of the way for the time being and pop the hoses out of it and set the bracket aside. Remove the 16mm bolt at the front of the engine mount brace. Next, remove the 16mm bolt securing the engine mount brace to the rear. Keep in mind that the engine may move back a little. Make sure that the jack with the block of wood is fully supporting the weight of the engine. Now remove the 16mm nut holding the engine mount bracket to the engine mount, green arrow. Once removed, carefully jack the engine up and off of the engine mount. On the 2004 and later Minis, the passenger side engine mount was redesigned. If you own one of these cars, you simply remove the ground strap, yellow arrow, and the 16mm nut on the top of the bracket, green arrow. Remove the E12 torque bolt underneath the passenger side engine mount. This long bolt secures the mount to the frame rail. Once removed, take the engine mount off the frame rail. You will need the extra space to remove the belt tensioner. Now remove the long 16mm bolt securing the tensioner arm to the engine at the front as shown here. Then remove the two 10mm bolts near the front of the tensioner and the 16mm bolt at the rear, green arrows. Once these bolts are removed, the tensioner can be maneuvered out from the side of the engine. Here is a view of the engine with the belt tensioner removed. Shown here is the failed factory stop, green arrow, compared to a new one, yellow arrow. As you can see, the tensioner stop in our project car had sheared off of the somewhat flimsy sheet metal. This small piece of metal is designed to hold the massive tension of the spring if the dampener strut fails. It's a good idea to also install a tensioner stop as added insurance. See our article and link at the end of this video for installing a belt tensioner stop for additional assistance. Here is the new belt tensioner installed on the side of the engine. At this point, reinstall the passenger side engine mount and lower the engine back onto the mount. Refit the serpentine belt and use the belt tool to relieve tension on the belt. On the R50 Cooper models, the belt tensioner is a different design. However, you will need to follow all of the steps in removing the passenger side engine mount in order to access the tensioner. Remove the two 10mm bolts at the top, shown here, green arrows. Remove the 10mm bolt at the bottom of the belt tensioner, green arrow. You will need to remove this bolt from the bottom of the frame rail. Once removed, you can remove the old tensioner from the engine. Shown here is the new belt tensioner for the non-S Cooper models. It will come with a locking pin installed. Do not remove the locking pin until the tensioner is installed. On the R55, R56, and R57 minis, the belt tensioner is more easily removed. Once you have removed the lock carrier, headlights, and serpentine belt, locate the two torque bolts shown here, green arrows, to remove the belt tensioner from the engine. For additional assistance with moving the lock carrier, headlights, and serpentine belt, please follow the link provided at the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and check out another video in this series.